Let's take a few minutes and talk about Mickey Joseph as Nebraska's next head football coach. We're heading into November, and the timeline is getting short for Nebraska to have a new football coach. I would guess that we'll hear about it in the third week of November, maybe the second week of November if it's going to be Mickey Joseph. I know that concept terrifies a lot of you, while others are probably for it. I am John Johnston, CornNation. Please subscribe to this channel, tell your friends, and spread our goodness to the universe. Hit the like button on our videos so YouTube presents our videos to more people. And let's go on with our conversation about Mickey Joseph. What do we know about Mickey Joseph? Well, first of all, he's familiar. He is a Nebraska guy. Played for Tom Osborne from 1988 to 1991. And because of that, I mean, he's still a Nebraska guy, right? We just got rid of another Nebraska guy who was a miserable failure. And probably look at this and going, do we really need another Nebraska guy? Well, some people would say yes, because he is familiar. And they know who he is from his playing days. And they know who he is now. Because I can tell you one thing about him. He seems to be very genuine. The other guy couldn't get a press conference right in 4 years of trying. Over 4 years. And Mickey Joseph steps up. And when he speaks, he seems like a very authentic person. He's probably not the most polished presser guy, but he's better than the last guy who seemed to throw everybody else under the bus but himself. Whereas Mickey Joseph, when he talks about things, he has a genuine, well, that's the word. He's genuine. He's authentic. You get the idea the guy's going to tell you the truth. Even sometimes you probably don't want to hear it. He's a good motivator. I think so. When the other guy was fired, this team could have just thrown in the towel completely. But Joseph, I think, has them playing good football, as good as they can. They're obviously not a very good football team. They're missing huge players good players on both of their offensive and defensive lines, so they can only get so far. So he has motivated, I think, those guys to play pretty well. And then the biggest thing that people probably recognize about Mickey Joseph is that he's a great recruiter. And he recruited Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase to LSU in 2019 when Joe Burrow threw the ball all over the place. And those two guys are probably two of the best receivers in the NFL now. So I think his recruiting prowess is well known. He got Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer to come to Nebraska. And if you think, well, that's no big deal, you're just kind of dismissing that, because it's pretty clear where Nebraska would be without either of those two players. They have made an impact, even though the season hasn't gone particularly well. So, great recruiter, great motivator, great presser, Nebraska guy, whether you like that or not. He's familiar. And I'm going to bring up something else that nobody else seems to want to touch, is that he is Nebraska's first black head coach in any sport in our history. And given that we have, 22 sports, sanctioned sports, NCAA sports, that's a long time to go without a black head coach. Now, I know a lot of you are going to respond and say, well, I don't care what race he is. Yeah, you probably don't. I'm not sure I do either. But I can guarantee you this. There's a percentage of people who do, and they represent the majority of our football players. So will that help him in recruiting? Probably. Would it help with relationships? Yeah, I don't think it's something you can just dismiss. And I can tell you this, nobody else in Nebraska's media is probably going to touch that topic with a 10-foot pole. Even though it's something worthy of discussion, I'm a little nervous talking about it because, well, for obvious reasons. But I do think that that's an asset in his behalf. The cons. Why wouldn't you want Mickey Joseph as your next head coach? Well, I think that it's pretty well known that he's only ever been a position coach. And the general or the common thing is to go from position coach to coordinator to head coach. And if you're skipping over those steps, what it means is that you have never been in charge, especially going from coordinator to head coach. You have never put a staff together. And I think that's a huge difference of going from a guy who is a worker to being a guy who is a manager. Because evaluating talent just isn't about recruiting. It's about evaluating somebody who you want to be a member of your team. What are they going to bring in skills? Like, let's say, a defensive coordinator. Can they recruit? Can they teach? Do they have good schemes? Can they adjust? Can they change as times change and we move forward? Those are all things that you have to look at and be able to look at other human beings and evaluate them. And, Mickey Joseph really did. He has apparently a little bit of experience at the NIA level of building a small staff, but it's not a lot for a place like Nebraska that is one of the top Power 5 choices in the nation for a head coach. I mean, we're still one of the top jobs in the nation. We have money. We have a fan base that goes to games, even though we suck. We don't have that big, huge recruiting base in Lincoln or in Nebraska, but we have nil money. And that's a lot of... We play in the Big Ten West. There's no juggernauts there. Those are all things that make this a very, very desirable job for somebody. And Mickey Joseph just doesn't have the experience to do it. And unless you want to look at it, listen, if you're going to talk yourself into Mickey Joseph as our next head coach, you have to suspend a lot of belief. In other words, you have to say, well, he'll figure it out on the run. Okay, are we going to have the patience to let him figure it out on the run? Because we let the last guy go because he was a Nebraska guy and everybody said good things and we just dismissed that stuff. And generally what happens with relationships, and this is a relationship between us and our beloved head coach, we tend to dismiss things in relationships and let them go if we're in favor of the relationship. In other words, we overlook the warts. We certainly did with the last guy. Are we going to make Mickey Joseph pay for the fact that we're not going to overlook anything with him? In fact, I feel like some of the shine is coming off of him as a shiny new object we're distracted by with this last game and this loss to Illinois. And we're probably going to lose some more games. And will he do enough to have auditioned for this job, despite the fact he was given a team with no lines? He was given coaches that he never hired and never chose. The guy has a lot of things going against him to try to get this job. I think, the whole he's not experienced enough should concern everybody. Having said that, I will say two things about Mickey Joseph. In conclusion, I'll say this. Mickey Joseph is going to be successful. He's going to be successful somewhere. Whether he's going to be successful at Nebraska or not remains to be seen. I would guess that if he is not the head coach, he is not going to stay at Nebraska, which means he's going to take his recruiting prowess somewhere else. Is that enough to keep him? No, it isn't. Is the idea that he might be successful somewhere else enough to keep him? No. Is the idea that, we've tried these other things, we might as well try this guy? That's kind of a weird defeatist attitude. And given that there's coaching candidates out there who are probably better candidates than him, no, it's not good enough to just say, yeah, we should try him. Having said all that, I am not going to freak out and poop my pants if Mickey Joseph is Nebraska's next head coach. I'm probably going to look at this and go, okay, I kind of get that. And I can get behind supporting Mickey Joseph as their next head coach. I think he'd be interesting. And I think that somebody out there somewhere is going to give him a chance. And like I said, he's going to be successful. I would like to hear your thoughts on this. One of the reasons I made this video, if you made it this far, is because I wanted something to point to if people kept asking me this question, and they keep asking me this question. Plus, it's time to just start discussing head coaches at Nebraska because we're getting down to it. And I don't know, given this season, if Mickey can win any more games because it looks like if Casey Thompson's out, pretty tough sledding from here. But I wish him the best. And I'll say one more thing about this. It's kind of more personal. I worked in New Orleans. I had a customer in New Orleans for quite a few years. Jefferson Parish School District, which is in the West Bank, which is where Mickey grew up, apparently. I was down there before and after Katrina. That guy took over like a school or something from the Ninth Ward and took those kids to Florida and helped them with their lives. I think that's an incredible thing to do because he put his coaching career on hold. And I saw the Ninth Ward, and it was horrible. That's a lot of respect for that guy. He's a good guy. He's going to be successful wherever he goes. Take that. Take care of yourselves. Go Big Red.